Mythical Beasts and Legendary Battles. Part 1. The Birth of Monsters. In every culture, myths serve as mirrors of human fears and dreams. But at the heart of these myths, monsters emerge, creatures that embody chaos, danger, and the unknown. To understand mythical beasts and their legendary battles, we must first travel back to the very beginning of time, when the cosmos itself was born from chaos, and the first monsters took shape in the shadows of creation. The birth of monsters is not merely about grotesque creatures with terrifying forms. It is about what they represent. The struggle between order and chaos, between the known and the mysterious. From the Greek concept of chaos birthing primordial beings to the serpents of Mesopotamian myth, these monsters are symbols of humanity's deepest anxieties: disease, storms, famine, death, and even the darkness of our own minds. Chaos and the first beasts. In Greek mythology, before the reign of the Olympian gods, the universe began with chaos. Out of this swirling void came Gaia, Earth, Tartarus, the abyss, Nyx, night, and Eros, desire. From Gaia and other primordial entities came a terrifying array of monstrous offspring. The giants, born from Gaia's anger, rose up against Zeus in the Gigantomachy. The Hecatonchires, 100-handed and 50-headed beings, were too terrifying even for the Titans. And most infamous of all, Typhon, a monstrous storm serpent whose very breath was fire, destined to challenge Zeus himself. Each of these early beasts was more than a threat. They were cosmic tests. Monsters in mythology weren't just obstacles. They were the very embodiment of the chaos that gods and heroes had to conquer in order for civilization and order to exist. Monsters as forces of nature. When ancient people looked at the world, they saw monsters everywhere. A sudden storm at sea was not just weather. It was Poseidon's wrath, or perhaps a sea monster dragging ships beneath the waves. A devastating earthquake wasn't just the ground shifting. It was the rage of giants shaking their prison beneath the earth. Thus, monsters were born from humanity's attempt to explain the unexplainable. The Hydra, with its regenerating heads, became a metaphor for problems that multiplied when struck down. The Chimera, breathing fire with the body of a lion, a goat, and a serpent, symbolized unnatural disasters, the combination of different terrors into one unstoppable force. By creating monsters, humans externalized fear, giving it shape, teeth, and claws. But in doing so, they also created a way to conquer those fears, through the bravery of heroes and the strength of the gods. The archetype of the serpent. Across nearly every culture, the serpent appears as one of the oldest and most fearsome monsters. Why? Because snakes are primal. They strike from the shadows, their venom brings death, and their ability to shed skin makes them symbols of both immortality and rebirth. In Mesopotamia, the goddess Tiamat was a dragon serpent of chaos, slain by Marduk to create the ordered world. In Egypt, Apophis, the giant serpent, sought each night to devour the sun god Ra as he traveled through the underworld. In Greece, Python was slain by Apollo and Typhon by Zeus. In Norse myth, Jormungandr, the world serpent, coils around the earth, destined to rise during Ragnarok. Serpents are never simple beasts. They are the eternal enemy of gods, guardians of forbidden knowledge, and symbols of death that must be defeated before life can flourish. The duality of monsters. But here lies the paradox. Monsters were not always purely evil. They could be protectors, tricksters, or tests of worthiness. For example, the Sphinx in Greek myth devoured those who failed to answer her riddle, but she also rewarded wisdom. In Hindu mythology, Nagas, serpent beings, were both dangerous and divine, sometimes bringing rain and fertility. Monsters reveal what cultures value and what they fear. They are the line between humans and the divine, between survival and annihilation. Facing them is not just about survival, It is about transformation. The hero who slays a monster is never the same afterward. He or she emerges stronger, wiser, and closer to the gods. Monsters as reflections of humanity. Ultimately, the earliest monsters represent the shadows within ourselves. Typhon's rage reflects unchecked ambition. The Hydra reflects problems we refuse to solve. The Minotaur represents human cruelty and the consequences of unnatural acts. In myth, every monster is born from a mistake, an act of hubris, a divine punishment, or a primordial imbalance. Humanity creates its own beasts, whether through arrogance, fear, or desire. This truth makes monsters timeless, because they evolve with us. Even today, modern monsters live in our stories: Godzilla, Frankenstein, and alien invaders. They continue the tradition of embodying what we fear most. The birth of monsters is the birth of fear itself. They are older than gods, older than heroes, and they will never disappear. For as long as humans look into the darkness and wonder what lurks there, monsters will live in our myths. But this is only the beginning of their story. In the next part, we will witness how heroes rose against these terrors, how courage clashed with chaos in battles that defined the ancient world. Part 2: Heroes versus Monsters in Greek Mythology. If Part 1 revealed the birth of monsters, Part 2 shows us the clash between those monsters and the mortal or divine heroes who dared to confront them. Greek mythology, more than any other tradition, thrives on this eternal duel: man against beast, order against chaos, light against darkness. These stories were not just entertainment for ancient audiences, they were moral lessons, teaching that courage, wit, and persistence can overcome even the most terrifying of adversaries. Perseus and Medusa, the hero who stared into terror. Among the most famous Greek monsters is Medusa, the Gorgon whose gaze could turn men into stone. With snakes for hair and a face so hideous it was lethal, she embodied the fear of looking directly into evil. Perseus, the demigod son of Zeus, was tasked with slaying her. Armed with gifts from the gods, a mirrored shield from Athena, winged sandals from Hermes, and a sword forged by Hephaestus, he approached the sleeping Medusa. By using the reflection in his shield, Perseus avoided her deadly gaze and struck her down. From her severed neck sprang Pegasus, the winged horse. This tale is more than a battle. It's about intelligence over brute force. Perseus did not win by strength, but by cleverness and divine aid. Medusa, once a beautiful maiden cursed by Athena, also reminds us that monsters can be born from tragedy and injustice. Theseus and the Minotaur, the labyrinth of fear. Deep beneath the palace of King Minos of Crete lay the labyrinth, a twisting prison built by Daedalus to hold the Minotaur, a monstrous being with the body of a man and the head of a bull. Born of a curse, the Minotaur fed on human sacrifices, sent from Athens every 9 years. Theseus, prince of Athens, volunteered to enter the labyrinth and end this terror. With the help of Ariadne, who gave him a ball of thread to find his way out, Theseus confronted the beast in the dark corridors. After a brutal fight, he killed the Minotaur and led his people to freedom. The Minotaur's story represents humanity's confrontation with its own cruelty, for the monster was born from Minos's arrogance and the gods' punishment. Theseus's victory symbolizes civilization, overcoming barbarism, and the triumph of human will over fear. Heracles and the Hydra, a trial of endurance. Heracles, the greatest hero of Greece, faced 12 labors, and one of the most daunting was slaying the Lernaean Hydra. This serpent-like monster had multiple heads, and whenever one was cut off, 2 more grew in its place. Its breath was poisonous, and its blood was deadly. With the help of his nephew Iolaus, Heracles discovered the solution. Each time he cut off a head, Iolaus cauterized the wound with fire, preventing regeneration. Finally, Heracles dipped his arrows in the Hydra's poisonous blood, turning them into weapons of unstoppable power. The Hydra represents problems that multiply when ignored, chaos that grows stronger if not confronted with wisdom. Heracles' victory shows that some battles require both strength and strategy, as well as the support of allies. Cerberus, the guardian of the underworld. Not all monsters could be slain. Some had to be faced and tamed. Heracles' 12th and final labor was to descend into Hades and bring back Cerberus, the three-headed hound that guarded the gates of the underworld. Cerberus was no ordinary beast. Each head represented the past, present, and future, and his serpent tail symbolized death itself. Armed with only his strength, Heracles wrestled the beast into submission and dragged it to the surface world. This labor represents the ultimate trial, confronting death itself. Heracles could not kill Cerberus, for death cannot be destroyed, but by facing it with courage, he proved himself a hero among heroes. Bellerophon and the Chimera, fire against the sky. The Chimera was a nightmare-given form, a lion's body, a goat's head protruding from its back, and a serpent's tail. It breathed fire and ravaged the lands of Lycia. The hero Bellerophon, riding the winged horse Pegasus, confronted this abomination from the skies. After a fierce battle, he lodged a spear tipped with molten lead into the Chimera's throat. The monster inhaled fire, melted the lead, and perished. This battle is a vivid image of man harnessing both courage and invention against unnatural terror. Yet Bellerophon's later arrogance, attempting to ride Pegasus to Olympus, reminds us that hubris, not monsters, is symbolism of hero versus monster. Every Greek hero who faced a monster was also facing something deeper. Perseus faced fear itself. Theseus faced human cruelty and sacrifice. Heracles faced chaos, death, and endurance. Bellerophon faced hubris and destruction. These myths taught that monsters are not random foes. They are mirrors of humanity's darkest flaws, and only by conquering them, sometimes with force, sometimes with wisdom, can humanity progress. The heroes of Greece did more than slay beasts. They gave us a blueprint for courage. They showed that even in the face of overwhelming odds, intelligence, bravery, and moral strength could bring victory. Yet Greece was not the only culture to tell such stories. In the next part, we will turn north, to the icy realms of the Norse, where monsters were not only enemies of gods, but also harbingers of the end of the world. Part 3. Beasts of Norse Mythology. If the Greeks gave us monsters that tested heroes and gods, the Norse myths brought us beasts that embodied destiny itself. In the frozen north, monsters were not just challenges to be defeated. They were inevitable forces of doom, heralds of Ragnarok, the end of the world. These creatures did not merely test courage. They prophesied the fall of gods, the death of heroes, and the rebirth of the cosmos. Fenrir, the wolf of doom. Perhaps the most infamous of all Norse monsters is Fenrir, the monstrous wolf, son of Loki and the giantess Angerboda. From birth, the gods feared him. He grew so quickly and so powerfully that even the Aesir, Odin, Thor, and Tyr, trembled at his presence. The gods tried to chain Fenrir, but he broke through every fetter. Finally, the dwarves crafted Gleipnir, a magical ribbon forged from impossible ingredients: the sound of a cat's footsteps, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. It looked soft and harmless, yet it was stronger than any chain. When the gods bound Fenrir with Gleipnir, he grew suspicious and demanded one of them place a hand in his mouth as a gesture of good faith. Only the brave god Tyr agreed. When Fenrir realized he was trapped, he bit off Tyr's hand. Prophecy foretold that during Ragnarok, Fenrir would break free, swallowing Odin himself in a cosmic battle. He was not just a beast, but the very embodiment of inevitable destruction, the unstoppable fate that even gods could not escape. Jormungandr, the world serpent. Another child of Loki and Angerboda was Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent. Cast into the sea by Odin, the serpent grew until it encircled the entire world, biting its own tail. Jormungandr symbolized infinity, the eternal cycle of life and death, creation and destruction. Thor, the thunder god, was destined to be Jormungandr's greatest enemy. In one tale, Thor attempted to fish up the serpent from the ocean. Disguised as a fisherman with the giant Hymir, Thor baited his line with an ox's head. When Jormungandr took the bait, Thor pulled with all his strength, raising the colossal serpent from the depths. The two locked eyes, and Thor prepared to strike with his hammer, Mjolnir. But Hymir, terrified, cut the line, sending the serpent back into the sea. The prophecy was clear. During Ragnarok, Thor and Jormungandr would kill each other, Thor slaying the serpent with Mjolnir, only to stagger 9 steps before dying from its venom. This was not just a fight, but destiny itself, an unchangeable cycle where even gods fall to chaos. Hel, the queen of the dead. The third child of Loki and Angerboda was Hel, the goddess who ruled over the underworld that bore her name. Half of her body was beautiful and alive, while the other half was decayed and corpse-like. Hel was not a beast in the traditional sense, but she was monstrous in her dominion. She ruled over those who died of sickness, old age, or dishonorable means, not the glorious warriors who went to Valhalla, but the forgotten dead. Her realm was cold, bleak, and merciless. Though feared, Hel was necessary. She balanced the world, reminding mortals and gods alike that death was inevitable for all. At Ragnarok, her armies of the dead would march alongside her father Loki, proving that even the forgotten and the damned had a role in the end of days. The dragon Nidhogg, the devourer of roots. At the base of Yggdrasil, the world tree, dwelt Nidhogg, a dragon who gnawed at its roots. Above, an eagle perched in its branches, and between them a squirrel named Ratatoskr carried insults back and forth, spreading malice. Nidhogg was not just a beast, but a cosmic force of decay, forever trying to weaken the foundation of existence. He feasted on corpses in the underworld and sought to bring about the collapse of the cosmos. When Ragnarok came, Nidhogg would rise from the underworld, carrying the corpses of the damned in his wings, the giants and trolls, ancient foes. Norse mythology is also filled with Jotnar, giants, and trolls, beings who personify the raw, untamed forces of nature. Some were wise and cunning, while others were brutal and savage. They were not always evil, but they stood in opposition to the gods, representing chaos against order. The frost giants embodied the relentless cold of winter. The fire giants of Muspelheim, led by Surtur, represented flames of destruction. During Ragnarok, Surtur would rise with his flaming sword, burning the world to ash. His presence showed that in the Norse worldview, destruction was not the end, but the beginning of renewal. The inevitability of doom. Unlike Greek myths, where heroes triumphed over monsters, Norse myths remind us that sometimes monsters cannot be defeated. They are woven into fate itself. Fenrir must kill Odin. Jormungandr must die with Thor. Surtur must burn the world. These myths taught the Norse people a harsh but profound truth. Death is inevitable, but what matters is facing it with courage. To the Norse, heroism was not about survival. It was about meeting destiny head-on, no matter the cost. The beasts of Norse mythology are more than monsters. They are destiny given form. Wolves, serpents, dragons, and giants stand not only as enemies of the gods, but as reminders that even the divine cannot escape the cycles of creation and destruction. In the next part, we will journey to the sands of Egypt and the rivers of Mesopotamia, where monsters took on new forms, serpents of chaos, devourers of souls, and primordial dragons that threatened to unravel the universe. Part 4. Ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia's Beasts. While the Greeks and Norse saw monsters as challenges to gods and heroes, the Egyptians and Mesopotamians saw them as forces that threatened the very order of the universe. For these ancient civilizations, maintaining cosmic balance, known as Ma'at in Egypt and Mi in Mesopotamia, was the foundation of life itself. Monsters represented chaos, darkness, and destruction, forever lurking at the edges of creation, waiting to plunge the world back into disorder. Apophis, the eternal enemy of the sun. In Egyptian mythology, the most feared monster was Apophis, or Apep, a colossal serpent of chaos. Every night, as the sun god Ra traveled through the underworld on his solar bark, Apophis would attack, trying to devour the sun and plunge the world into eternal night. The battle was endless. Ra was aided by other gods, like Set, who speared Apophis to hold him back. Yet Apophis could never be truly destroyed. Each dawn, when the sun rose, it meant Ra had triumphed again. But each sunset warned that the serpent still waited, coiled in the darkness. Apophis symbolized the eternal struggle between order and chaos. He was not just a monster, but the embodiment of every storm, earthquake, or disaster that threatened the fragile balance of life. Ammit, the devourer of souls. If Apophis threatened the cosmos, Ammit threatened the individual soul. Known as the devourer of the dead, Ammit had the body of a lion, the head of a crocodile, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus, the three most dangerous animals known to the Egyptians. In the Hall of Judgment, when a soul was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, a heavy, guilty heart was thrown to Ammit. She devoured it, condemning the soul to eternal restlessness. Unlike Apophis, Ammit was not an enemy of the gods, but an enforcer of cosmic justice. She was terrifying yet necessary, ensuring that only the righteous could pass into the afterlife. To the Egyptians, she was both monster and protector, the serpent of the Nile, symbol of rebellion. Serpents were everywhere in Egyptian myth, both protective and destructive. The cobra, or uraeus, was worn on the pharaoh's crown as a symbol of divine power, spitting fire at enemies. But serpents also embodied rebellion. Those who defied the gods often appeared as snakes, destined to be crushed under divine authority. This duality shows how the Egyptians saw monsters not as random terrors, but as part of a moral order. Chaos existed to be conquered, rebellion to be punished. Tiamat, the dragon of primordial chaos. Across Mesopotamia, the most legendary monster was Tiamat, the primordial dragon serpent of the Salt Sea. In the Babylonian Enuma Elish, Tiamat embodied chaos itself. At first, she nurtured the younger gods, but when they rose against her husband Apsu, she unleashed fury. From her body, she created an army of monsters, serpents, dragons, scorpion men, and storm demons, to wage war against the gods. In the climactic battle, the storm god Marduk faced her. With a net, a bow, and an arrow of lightning, he split Tiamat in two. From one half he made the sky, and from the other, the earth. This myth is not just about a god killing a monster. It is the ultimate story of creation emerging from chaos, order carved from destruction. Tiamat was both mother and monster, a necessary sacrifice for the world to exist. Humbaba, guardian of the cedar forest. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of humanity's oldest stories, the hero Gilgamesh and his companion Enkidu face Humbaba, the guardian of the sacred cedar forest. Humbaba was a giant with a monstrous face, a voice like a storm, and the breath of death. Placed there by the god Enlil, Humbaba was both protector and terror. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu slew him, it was not just an act of heroism, but an act of defiance against the gods. This battle marked humanity's growing independence, but it also carried consequences. Enkidu's death soon followed, a punishment for defying the divine order. The Bull of Heaven, Wrath of the Gods. Another terrifying creature in the epic of Gilgamesh was the Bull of Heaven. When the goddess Ishtar was scorned by Gilgamesh, she sent the bull to punish him. Its steps cracked the earth, opening chasms that swallowed men. Its breath withered fields and crops. Yet Gilgamesh and Enkidu fought and killed the bull. This victory was short-lived, for it provoked the god's wrath, leading directly to Enkidu's cursed fate. Here, the monster represented divine vengeance, a reminder that even heroes could not defy the gods without consequence. Chaos versus order, a shared theme. Whether Egyptian or Mesopotamian, the pattern is clear. Monsters symbolized chaos, and their battles with gods and heroes were cosmic dramas of order versus disorder. Apophis tried to unmake the sun. Amit judged souls unworthy of eternity. Tiamat embodied the raw, untamed ocean. Humbaba guarded divine secrets from mortals. The Bull of Heaven struck as punishment for arrogance. Each monster was not just a creature, but a principle, a reminder that life, justice, and even creation itself depended on resisting the pull of chaos. The monsters of Egypt and Mesopotamia remind us that mythology is not only about individual bravery, but about universal balance. These beasts threatened more than just lives. They threatened the cosmos, morality, and the very foundations of existence. In the next part, we will venture to the Far East, where Chinese and Japanese myths gave birth to dragons, oni, and yokai, creatures that were not always enemies, but sometimes guardians, teachers, or even gods themselves. Part 5. Far Eastern Beasts. Beyond the mountains of the West and the deserts of the Middle East, there lies another world of myth, a world where dragons rule the skies, spirits haunt the forests, and demons test the courage of humankind. This is the realm of the Far East, where beasts were not only enemies, but guides, guardians, and reflections of the human soul. 1. Chinese dragons, celestial guardians of balance. Unlike their European counterparts, Chinese dragons were not fire-breathing monsters to be slain. They were divine beings, symbols of wisdom, prosperity, and balance. Legends tell of dragons who could control the rains, rivers, and oceans. Farmers prayed for their blessing. Emperors claimed their authority from the mandate of the dragon, and entire dynasties used the dragon as their sacred emblem. The Dragon King, ruler of the four seas, held the power of storms. To anger him meant droughts or floods. To please him was to ensure abundance. These dragons were not enemies, but forces of nature, untamed, unpredictable, yet essential. They represented harmony, the balance between heaven and earth, strength and mercy, chaos and order. 2. Japanese Oni, the demons of human folly. In contrast, Japanese mythology introduced the Oni, fearsome demons with horns, red or blue skin, wild hair, and tusks. They carried iron clubs and thrived on destruction. But Oni were not mindless beasts. They were often humans transformed by immense rage, greed, or evil deeds. In many tales, they symbolized the darker side of human nature, the sins that, if left unchecked, consume the soul. Heroes like Momotaro, the Peach Boy, fought bands of Oni, showing that courage and purity of heart could triumph over corruption. Festivals like Setsubun still reenact the banishing of Oni, with people shouting, "Oni wa soto, fuku wa uchi," demons out, good fortune in. The Oni are reminders. Sometimes the monsters we fear most are the ones we create within ourselves. 3. Yokai, spirits of the everyday world. Beyond Oni, Japanese folklore is filled with yokai, supernatural creatures that could be both mischievous and terrifying. The kappa, a turtle-like river spirit, could drown humans, but also taught them medicine. The kitsune, a magical fox, could shapeshift into a beautiful woman, testing men's desires and loyalty. The tengu, crow-headed warriors, dwelled in mountains, both punishing arrogance and guiding worthy souls. Yokai were not distant gods, but spirits woven into the everyday. They embodied the mysteries of nature, the fears of the night, and the thin line between the known and the unknown. 4. Indian Nagas, serpents of power and wisdom. In Indian mythology, serpents were not always cursed. The Nagas, half-human, half-serpent beings, were powerful guardians of treasures and knowledge. Dwelling in underground palaces, they controlled rivers and rainfall. Some Nagas brought blessings, others brought droughts and plagues. They could be both protectors and destroyers, reminding humans of nature's duality. One of the most famous tales is that of Shesha, the thousand-headed Naga who serves as Vishnu's eternal bed. He holds the universe upon his coils, symbolizing infinity and cosmic order. Nagas represented life, death, and rebirth, the endless cycle mirrored in the shedding of a serpent's skin. 5. Garuda, the eternal enemy of serpents. If Nagas represented serpents, Garuda was their eternal foe. A giant bird-like being, half man and half eagle, Garuda was born of divine blood. His wings spanned the heavens, his cry struck fear into the Nagas, and his speed surpassed the wind. Garuda is often depicted carrying Vishnu, serving as his mount. Together, they embodied justice and protection against evil. But Garuda's war with the Nagas was not mindless destruction. It symbolized the eternal conflict between light and darkness, knowledge and ignorance, freedom and bondage. 6. Rakshasas, the shape-shifting demons. Among India's most feared beings were the Rakshasas, shape-shifting demons who thrived on chaos. They were masters of illusion, often appearing as beautiful humans before revealing monstrous forms. In the epic Ramayana, the demon king Ravana, himself a Rakshasa, kidnapped Sita, leading to an epic war with the hero Rama. Rakshasas were cunning, powerful, and ruthless, but their downfall always came from their arrogance and cruelty. They symbolized the temptations that lure humans away from righteousness, and the battles one must fight within to remain true. 7. The legacy of Eastern beasts. Unlike many Western myths where monsters were destined to be slain, Eastern mythology often embraced a more complex view. Dragons were revered as guides, not enemies. Oni and Rakshasas were punishments for moral failure. Yokai showed the mystery of the everyday. Nagas and Garuda represented eternal dualities. These creatures were not just nightmares. They were teachers, guardians, and warnings. They shaped the cultures of Asia, influencing rituals, art, and identity for thousands of years. From the skies of China to the mountains of Japan, from the rivers of India to the cosmic battles of gods and demons, the beasts of the Far East remain timeless. They remind us that monsters are not only foes to fear, they are mirrors of our spirit, guardians of nature, and symbols of the eternal struggles within the human soul.